A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this side event that is being co-hosted by the Government of India and the International Tropical Timber Organization. My name is Sheam Satkuru, and I hail from the ITTO itself, and I will be moderating this session where we have 4 fantastic speakers. Well, you may see a few more bodies on the panel, but one gentleman will be interpreting for one of our distinguished speakers. I would like to just briefly introduce the speakers very quickly. Now, we have Dr. K. Ravichandran, who is director from the Indian Institute of Forest Management, and he will speak on Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme. The next speaker hails from Malaysia, to my right, Dr. Ahmad Fazil bin Abdul Majid, and he will present on the Malaysian Timber Certification Scheme, 25 years of championing sustainability. Dr. Fazil is a senior director from the Forest Department of Peninsular Malaysia. Our third speaker, of course, is Senor Marte Vasquez, who hails from INAB, the Instituto Nacional de Bosques, and he is deputy director at INAB. And the gentleman sitting to his right is Senor Antonio Gueron, who will be very kindly interpreting for Senor Vasquez. And last but not least, we have Mr. Joseph Apia Japong, who hails from Ghana. He will be speaking on behalf of the Chief Executive for the Ghana Forestry Commission, and he will give you an insight into the GLAS, G-H-LAS, meaning the Ghanaian Legality Assurance System, Ghana's road to legally backed sustainable practices at scale. Now, the title of today's presentation, of course, is Mainstreaming Legal and Sustainable Supply Chains of Tropical Wood Products for Responsible Production and Consumption. Now, in working out the elements that are needed for legal and sustainable supply chains, we, of course, look at verification schemes. So the arena of certification has been toyed around with for close to 3 decades now. So that shows how old I am and how long I've been around. But there has been quite a lot of progress in the field of forest certification. Of course, in more recent years, over the last 2 decades, they have been complemented with legality verification systems. In other words, legal assurance systems or timber legality assurance systems. Many countries have embarked on this process with the intention of improving the management of their forestry resources, particularly in tropical countries, and also in providing assurance to the markets, meaning the consumer markets, predominantly, actually, over the last 2.5 to 3 decades, that the products are coming from sustainably managed forests. Intrinsically, though, lately, this also applies to domestic markets. In previous years, all efforts to provide legality verification or forest certification were generally aimed at the countries who were export-orientated. But increasingly, particularly over the last 15 years, it has come to bear that domestic markets are almost equally as important as the international export markets that they are targeting. For example, in my own home country in Malaysia, about a decade and a half ago, when we looked into the consumption domestically and the volumes that were heading for export markets, they were almost equal. This shows that the domestic markets also need to focus on ensuring that the sources used in country are also from responsibly harvested forests. Without wasting further ado, may I now invite Dr. Ravichandran to give the first presentation. And can I also implore on all speakers to try and keep your speeches to a maximum of 8 minutes so that we can have at least a Q&A session with the audience. Please, Dr. Ravi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, delegates. India is one of the mega biodiverse countries in the world. India is bestowed with tropical forest, subtropical forest, temperate forest, subalpine and alpine forest. You name any biome, India has it. So in the last 4 decades or so, if you look at the forest and tree cover, it is on the rise. Today, we are having nearly 80 million hectares of forest and tree cover, and the recorded forest represents 71 million hectare, which contributes 21.7% of the total geographical area. And if you look at the last decade alone, between 2010 and 2020, we have gained the maximum forest area, and which is the 3rd largest in the world. If you look at our population and the projected GDP for the current financial year is pitched at 6.8%. That means the demand for timber and wood will be on the rise. And with that, if you look at the expansion of forest cover, India is always committed. Whatever commitment at national and international level we have given, we have tried our best to achieve that, whether it is under bond challenge or under nationally determined contributions. India has achieved remarkably. India is one of the countries which has adopted a national agroforestry policy way back in 2014 in order to promote tree outside forest. And tree outside forest, if you look at, nearly 8 million hectares are currently occupied under tree outside forest, where large and small, medium farmers have raised tree farming in their agriculture land outside forest area. India is one of the pioneers in managing the forest scientifically on a sustainable principle. And if you look at the scientific management of our forest, it dates back to 1800. The first working plan was prepared in 1837 for the Travancore region of Kerala of India. Since then, scientific management of forest is pursued. And in order to have a uniformity in working of forest across various provinces in the country, the National Working Plan Code was promulgated in 2004. Subsequently, it was amended in 2014, and today we have a National Working Plan Code which was revised last year. The 2023 National Working Plan Code largely talks about the sustainable forest management principles. Thanks to ITTO, since 1998, India, with the help of ITTO, developed the criteria, indicators, and verifiers for sustainable forest management of our country. And in 2016, we have published the sustainable forest management, the criteria and indicators. And since then, our forests are largely focused and being maintained on the principles of sustainable forest management. Today, we need to have forest areas which are certified, monitored, whether it's being managed sustainably or not. So with that, the country wanted to launch its national certification scheme, the Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme. So the scheme was launched last year with primarily to have a certification cost effective, reduce the time frame, make Indian standards globally acceptable, and bring certifications amongst small, marginal, medium farmers and tree growers. And we also in the process to promote group certifications in order to benefit the marginal farmers. And under this certification scheme, we have the Indian Forest Certification Council, which is the apex body, which deals with all issues related to Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme. And Indian Institute of Forest Management has been assigned the task of scheme operating agency. And we have a Center for Sustainable Forest Management and Forest Certification, which will be acting as the secretariat for this certification scheme. And accreditation of certification bodies are done by Quality Council of India and the National Accreditation Board for Certifying Bodies, which has been recognized by International Accreditation Forum. The Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme is called as PRAMAN. PRAMAN means the Program for Recognition and Accreditation of Sustainable Management Practices for Agroforestry and Natural Forestry Resources. It is at par with any national or international scheme and also meets the specific needs and requirements of the country given its specific contours in terms of certification standards, accreditation, and certification processes. And therefore, this scheme is eligible for mutual recognition and market acceptance. This is the overall scheme of the Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme. We have, as I mentioned, Indian Forest and Wood Certification Council, which is at the apex level, the scheme operating agency, the certification body, the accreditation body, and the applicant. The process flow is very smooth. We looked at all the national and international certification schemes, and all the bottlenecks which are in forest certifications have been removed in Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme. If you look at the current scenario, though we have 80 million hectares of area under forest and tree cover, nearly 6 million hectares of area of forest and tree cover have been certified so far. There is a huge potential. As our moderator mentioned, the domestic market alone caters the need for having such certification program in the country. This is the forest certification flow. The certification issues are addressed. We want to remove the monopolization of private players, and we want to promote, implement the certification scheme with least cost-effective way. And the procedure has been made very, very simple, and it can be easily adopted by any farmer. This is the accreditation system. So we have the National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies. They will identify the certification bodies. Today in our country, we have nearly 77 agriculture institutes which teaches forestry. And we will be using this expertise to have the certification bodies in these universities. The Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme has criteria, indicators, and verifiers. And if you look at the Indian Forest Management Standard, we have adopted the Bhopal India Process Standard, which has already been incorporated in the Working Plan Code. We have borrowed those criteria, indicators for our Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme. If you look at the Forest Management Certification Standard, we have 8 criteria and 69 verifiers, 69 indicators and 254 verifiers. And similarly, for the tree outside forest, we have developed a standard, and the standard meets the requirement of farm and agroforestry and tree outside forest. And we have 5 criteria for sustainably managing these plantations and farm and agroforestry systems. The indicators include 22, and the total verifiers are 76. And with this, there will be a seamless flow of timber, particularly wood and wood products from the sustainably managed plantations and forest areas. Chain of custody is another major issue which will take care of all the legality issues. Traceability is another thing which has been dovetailed very nicely in the program. Today, in order to promote the certification scheme, so we have embarked on capacity building mission at the national, regional, and district level, wherein the forest department, which are the custodian of natural forest resources, and the farmers, the industries, the institutions have been given enough insight about the requirement of certification scheme. Hopefully, in the coming years, through this Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme, we will be in a position to certify many forest areas and many plantations outside forest areas. With this, I take this opportunity to thank everyone for giving me a patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ravi, for giving us a the very interesting story of how India has evolved over the years. And India is a very interesting country, indeed, in terms of forest resources and consumption of wood products over the last, say, 40 to 50 years. As Dr. Ravi pointed out, yes, the domestic market is extremely important, and I'm glad that what I said earlier also applies to India. Well, we have been watching India for quite some time. That's a good thing, actually. It's a good thing. Now, ITTO, of course, is committed to helping its member countries in the arena of legality verification and also forest certification. As you correctly pointed out, there are two parts to the certification exercise. You have the chain of custody for companies, and you have the forest management unit certification. So they are two kind of separate exercises, but intrinsically linked. And one cannot succeed without the other also succeeding. One failing will ensure that the other one also fails, just to add to the conversation. Next, may I invite Dato' Ahmad Fazil from Malaysia to present on Malaysia's long journey. I'm a little bit biased. Malaysia is a pioneer in this area amongst tropical countries, and I proudly call upon you to present Malaysia's case. Thank you, Dr. Fazil.
Thank you, Ms. Sheam. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be sharing with you on the Malaysian Timber Certification Council 25 years of championing sustainability. The contents of my presentation will cover the introduction to MTCC and the Malaysian Timber Certification Schemes, as well as outlining the growth and certification in Malaysia. And additionally, I will discuss the challenges and opportunities associated with the implementation of the certification schemes in Malaysia. The 13th meeting of the National Forestry Council in Malaysia endorsed the establishment of MTCC as an independent and non-profit company, limited by guarantee, responsible to develop and implement a voluntary national timber certification schemes in Malaysia. In 2018, on its 20th year of operation, MTCC has revised its vision and mission to guide MTCC for its future endeavors. The revision of the vision and mission provides opportunity for MTCC to reflect on its developments and growth, as well as its achievement and shortcoming, and what needs to be done to ensure its continuous relevance and contribution to the efforts toward achieving sustainable forest management in Malaysia. So the Malaysian timber certification schemes standards, there are two standards being implemented under MTCS. For the forest management certification, the standard is Malaysian Criteria Indicators for Sustainable Forest Management, and this standard specifies the requirement for the certification of sustainable forest management system that covers both certification for natural forests and forest plantation. Meanwhile, the chain of custody certification, the standard is PEFC, Chain of Custody of Forests and Tree-Based Products requirements. MTCC has fully adopted the PEFC's Chain of Custody standard to ensure that timber companies in Malaysia undergoes audit aligned with international requirements. Apart from providing assurance to the material contained in the forest-based products originate from sustainably managed forests, with the implementation of due diligence system, these two standards also covers other requirements such as indigenous people rights, community relation, workers' rights, HCV, and environmental impact. The program for the endorsement of forest certification, PEFC, is a framework for the mutual recognition of national forest certification scheme from all over the world. It involves the assessment and endorsement of certification schemes systems that have been developed based on internationally recognized requirement for sustainable forest management. MTCC was accepted as a member of the PEFC in 2002, and MTCS became the first tropical timber certification scheme in the Asia-Pacific region to be endorsed under the PEFC. In this relation, MTCC has achieved its initial vision to be recognized as the leading timber certification organization for tropical forests, and its mission to operate a credible and internationally recognized national timber certification scheme towards promoting sustainable forest management in Malaysia. The scheme, there are two components of the Malaysian Timber Certification Scheme: Forest Management Certification and Chain of Custody. As of March 2024, a total of 6.5 million hectares of forests and 361 companies in Malaysia are certified under the MTCS. A total of 264,240 cubic meters of certified products such as sawn timber, molding, plywood, wood pellet, and furniture were exported from Malaysia. The forested area in Malaysia is about 18.05 million hectares as of 2020, and the MTCS certified area in March 2024 is around 6.5 million hectares. It consists about 36.3% of the total forested area in Malaysia. The growth of the MTCS forest management certification, as we observe in 2001, only about 2.3 million hectares were certified under MTCS. These areas belong to timber producing states in Peninsular Malaysia. Given that certification under MTCS is a voluntary process, the area will gradually increase between 2003 to 2017, with the certification of the remaining 5 timber production states in Peninsular Malaysia. The significant increase of certified areas beginning 2018 could be the result of implementation of policies in Malaysia. In 2017, the Sarawak Forest Department has mandated that all long-term timber licenses in Sarawak must be certified by the end of 2025. This policy is part of Sarawak government's commitment to sustainably manage forest resources. The Malaysian policy on forestry launched in 2021 emphasized the continuation of importance and implementation of sustainable forest management through the certification of sustainable forest management for all 3 regions in Malaysia. In relation to this, it is evident that the policies impacted the growth of forest management certification in Malaysia. The timber industry, as of 2022, there are about 3,115 timber companies operating across Malaysia. Among these, 12% of the timber companies held chain of custody certification under the MTCS. The number of chain of custody certification certificates has increased gradually from 2021 to 2022. However, there was significant increase of new chain custody certificates being issued in 2013. This is driven by the alignment of PFC chain of custody standard with the requirement of European Union Timber Regulation, EUTR, and the Australian Illegal Logging Prohibition Act. In relation to this, it is evidence that importing country policies impacted the growth of chain of custody certification in Malaysia, and the endorsement by the PEFC have improved the marketability of the MTCS certified products for environmentally sensitive markets such as in Europe. Unfortunately, there were a slight decline trend in 2020 to 2022 that was attributed to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, resulting in business disruption and shortage of workers. During the initial years of MTCS implementation, certificate holders only certified primary product within their product scopes. Consequently, the early period witnesses Malaysia exporting only certified sawn timber. The National Timber Industry Policy, or NATIP, that was launched in 2009 emphasized on higher value-added downstream activities. This policy has led to a broader spectrum of certified products under the MTCS, which now includes a greater variety of secondary and tertiary products such as molding, furniture, builders, joinery, and carpentry, such as doors and other engineered wood. Final products such as furniture, kitchenware, and decking are also in demand by importing countries. The product ranges from chopping boards and coasters to serving trays and menu boards that are ideal for your kitchen and dining space. The importing markets, especially in developed countries, are placing greater emphasis on ensuring that the timber products, particularly from tropical countries, are sourced from sustainably managed forests. Many of the developed countries have implemented procurement policies, such as the USA LACI Act, the Australian Illegal Logging Prohibition Act, the EU Timber Regulation, EUTR, and recently the European Deforestation Regulation, EUDR, and also the Japan Clean Wood Act, and also the UK Timber Regulation, which limit and constrain market access. Certification is increasingly becoming the key to gaining access to developed country markets. The consumers view certification as a means to ensure that the timber products procured come from forests managed sustainably. These are seen as a conscious efforts on their parts towards reducing deforestation, protecting biodiversity, as well as mitigating climate change impact. In relation to this, the MTCS provides an added advantage to Malaysia timber products by providing the insurance of legality and sustainability. In terms of market destination, the list has grown from the Netherlands in 2002 to include 75 other destinations all around the group. In 2023, the Netherlands remains the major export destination for MTCS certified timber products, accounting to 19% of the total export volume, followed by United Kingdom and Belgium for the Europe segment. As for the challenges and opportunities, we listed four. The first one is the EUDR and consumer country policies. The EUDR, which entered into force on 29 June 2023, aimed to decrease the production and consumption of commodities and derived product linked to deforestation and forest degradation entering or leaving the EU market. The EUDR requires companies to exercise due diligence for their products, which must be legally produced and deforestation-free. This means not produced on land that has been subject to deforestation or forest degradation after 31st December 2020. Businesses must adapt and align their operation to meet requirements, including conducting due diligence and offering additional information about materials sources such as geolocation. As mentioned in earlier slide, many of the developed countries have implemented the procurement policies. These policies will be revised from time to time, and therefore the manufacturers are expected to fulfill the revised requirement. Certification of forest plantation. Certifying the forest plantation can meet the industry demand for timber. As you know, plantation species are chosen for their uniformity and rapid growth, which help alleviate pressure on the timber supply from natural forests. Unfortunately, the constraint of forest plantation certification is the cutoff date for establishing the forest plantation itself. Certification of non-timber forest product, NTFP. NTFP are products derived from forests other than timber, such as fruits, nuts, medicinal plants, and resin. Currently, a number of certified NTFP are being produced from the material sourced from the temperate forests. NTFP is relatively new in Malaysia and therefore need more research on feasibility of the NTFPs. Additional efforts are required to develop policies and guidelines for NTFPs management and harvesting is needed to ensure uniformity in the understanding and implementation of forest management certification that also includes NTFPs. Integrating social forestry practice is also an issue where social forestry involves the inclusion of local community in forest management, aiming to achieve ecological, social, and economic benefits. The last is the modernization and mechanization of sustainable forest management practice that can reduce the time required for timber extraction and also safeguarding the environment by minimizing forest waste. However, the adaptation is always associated to the lack of investment by forest managers in this area. It is undeniable that incentives are a crucial factor in the acceptance of and adoption of modernization and mechanization of sustainable forest management practice. Further research on this matter is needed for tropical forest SFM practice. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dato' Fadhil. Again, you've captured Malaysia's, 3-decade-long journey in the certification arena extremely well. Of course, there are challenges and opportunities also for countries that are embarking on this process. But again, over the years, I think many countries have learned what really matters and what needs focus. And of course, then we have the different groups of producers. We have the smallholders, you have the artisanal producers. Now, at this point, it's the artisanal group, I think, that suffer the most. And of course, schemes and even ITTO are looking into ways in which to bring them on board. The issue is with artisanal artisanal consumers of wood resources. They are generally in the informal sector. So we need to find a way to formalize the artisanals, because with the smaller producers, the group certification and everything definitely fits in. And very accurate that more investments, fiscal and non-fiscal incentives need to be provided so that forest managers and political will in the country actually to invest in their forests is increased. On that note, the ITTO contributed to a study that was published by the World Bank already about 4 years ago, and it's a study on the applicable and workable fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. It's available on the ITTO website. So for member countries who are interested in looking at ways in which this matter can be dealt with, please get the report. Okay, now we go to our next speaker, Senor Martin Vasquez from INAB in Guatemala, who will present on Guatemala's journey on timber tracking and monitoring. Please, Senor Vasquez, floor is yours.
Muchas gracias. Muy buenas tardes a todos y cada uno de ustedes. Será un gusto para nosotros como Instituto Nacional de Bosques de Guatemala, pues dar a conocer o presentarles en este espacio lo que hemos logrado desarrollar en los últimos 10 años, que han sido sistemas que nos ayudan a los importadores de productos forestales de Guatemala a hacer la rastreabilidad y trazabilidad de los productos.
Hello everyone, this is Mr. Martin Vasquez. I'm Antonio Guaron. I'm going to be interpreting for him. We welcome everyone, and it's a pleasure for INAB, which is the Forest Service of Guatemala, to present the work of the last 10 years in developing traceability system for wood products, especially for helping importers of Guatemalan wood products.
como podemos apreciar, pues Guatemala es un país bastante pequeño, que el 51% de sus bosques está dentro de las áreas protegidas y el 49% están fuera de estas áreas. Aquí hablamos sobre cómo hacer resilientes estas áreas, este porcentaje de bosque. Entendemos que para hablar de trazabilidad hay que ver los bosques naturales, los bosques plantados, el transporte, la industria, la exportación, hasta llegar al consumo doméstico y la exportación de productos. Esto no sería posible si también no hay actualización en los marcos normativos.
Guatemala is a small country, and we have 51% of protected areas in our forests. And we also have 49% of forest outside protected areas. And these areas need to be resilient. And also, in order to get this resilience, we have implemented a traceability, but it needs to be done in natural forest, plantations, industry, exports, imports, and also in domestic markets. But all of that is related always to norms and regulations. So we have been working on it for a long time.
Entonces, desde el 2014 a la fecha hemos venido apuntándole mucho al uso de la tecnología y de la mano esto con sistemas que nos ayuden a tener un mejor control como entidades rectoras de nuestro país y sin perder de vista ser eficientes, ser ágiles y no afectar en ningún momento la actividad económica que se desarrolla tanto los silvicultores, los transportistas, así como la industria forestal. En estos años hemos desarrollado sistemas electrónicos de gestión que facilitan el hacer una gestión u obtener un permiso para aprovechamiento forestal de bosque natural o de bosque plantado, generar documentos con mayor fiabilidad para el transporte del producto forestal, inclusive con la utilización de códigos de respuesta rápida, QR, así como en la industria forestal tener un mayor y mejor control eficiente también para que todos los productos que ingresen a la industria forestal de Guatemala se pueda saber el origen, la especie, el volumen y algunos otros datos que nos puedan ser útiles.
Since 2014, we have been using technology and we have been developing electronic systems with national institutions that are in charge of enhancing law enforcement and also forest monitoring. And we have been doing it in an efficient and an agile way without affecting all the economic activities related to forests, such as transport, industries, also forest management itself. With these electronic systems, we have been involving the natural forests, also the plantations, and agroforestry and other forest activities. And we have also developed different documentation being able to be used during transport, industry, or being used through electronic systems. We have rapid response documentations, so they can be consulted or checked via internet. So we don't need big time to get a response on the use of these documents. Yeah.
Tenemos aquí pueden apreciar algunas imágenes de que son los accesos a estas herramientas electrónicas que prácticamente ayudan a la formulación de un expediente y por ende hacer una gestión. Esto nos permite también ser mucho más eficientes en la gestión de todas las autorizaciones que se hacen dentro del territorio guatemalteco. por demás decir que se quitan aspectos como discrecionalidad y burocracia para poder hacer una gestión desde lo que es las plantaciones. No dejamos elementos sin considerar, tomamos en cuenta los aprovechamientos pequeños de 3, 5 árboles que se dan por una necesidad que se tengan por los grupos comunitarios o alguna persona individual. También se desarrolló un sistema para tener un control de la cantidad, la calidad y el origen de estos productos dentro del comercio local.
So we provide access to different users of these systems. We provide access to the information of the expedients or the files of all the authorizations that the Forest Service provide to the users, and also it helps us to be more objective and evaluate the specific requirements and avoid subjective evaluations in the field and also in the transport and all the chain of custody. We also provide these tools to small landowners and small enterprises, such as communities or other people that doesn't have access to big technology. And we can track the amount of wood, the quality, the origin of all these products, and we provide these tools basically to everyone that is in the forest service. In the forest sector in Guatemala.
En la imagen podemos apreciar parte del uso que le damos a la información que estamos capturando en tiempo real, y esto también se actualiza en tiempo real. Estamos tratando de que nuestros sistemas generen y provean de información para los mercados nacionales como internacionales. En la imagen pueden observar que todos los puntos de gestión para una plantación de un bosque plantado, automáticamente se pone el punto, la ubicación geográfica dentro de nuestro mapa y captura toda la información que ha sido ingresada y la hace visible. No toda la información, la que le pueda ser útil para alguien que requiera hacer un negocio, que desea hacer un negocio. Y aquí podemos ver la ubicación, el lugar, la especie, el volumen, si necesita un raleo, un correo electrónico o un número de teléfono para que alguien pueda contactar directamente a ese productor.
So we have an example here of all the information that we compile. We can have this information in near real time. And in terms of international commerce, we can know where is coming the wood from, in which plantation. We can locate it geographically. We can have information for businesses. Also, we in the previous slide, we could see that we have different information being collected, such as place, species, volume, and also management activities that need to be done in this specific area. And we have all sorts of information provided by these systems.
También con el módulo de las autorizaciones de bosques naturales, nosotros podemos tener una rastreabilidad a lo interno, saber de un aprovechamiento de un bosque natural hacia qué industria de Guatemala está yendo, qué cantidad, cuánto es troza, cuánto es trocilla, cuánto es leña, lo que se está yendo ya sea a un consumidor final, a una industria o a una industria que posterior a eso le va a dar un valor agregado y se va a mover a otra industria. Nosotros con estas herramientas electrónicas le podemos dar todo ese seguimiento a lo interno, así como cuando el producto va para la exportación.
In this module, an electronic module, we can give authorizations or licenses, and we also know if the commerce is being done between industries or to the end user or the consumer. And we can have information about what is being produced, what is being traded, and if they are exporting it or they are using this wood in the local market.
Entonces, teniendo toda esta data, que prácticamente capturamos día con día y que automáticamente se va analizando y esto va distribuyéndose a otras herramientas y a otros portales dentro de toda la gama de sistemas. Hay que considerar algo sumamente importante. Y como servicios forestales, dar ese paso significativo, no solo al tener buenos técnicos, buenos ingenieros forestales, sino también hacer una inversión en infraestructura, en tecnología, de informática, porque eso va de la mano. Entendemos de que no solo es generar un sistema, sino que hay que darle un soporte. En ese tema del soporte ya son otro tipo de profesiones, otra rama que debemos de contratar y fortalecer dentro de nuestras instituciones, pero también algo importante, el tema de salvaguardar toda la información que se está almacenando.
Being said that, with all the data that we are collecting, all the information that is being developed, there is a key role that needs to be developed in the forest sector, which is all the technology and information associated to it. And we need to provide good technicians, good technical people in the Forest Service, but also we need to have technology, we need to provide support, and we also need to safeguard the information, because not all the information is public, of course, but we need to improve all the technology in the Forest Services.
Todo esto de nuestras herramientas, como el tema de la gestión para autorizar aprovechamientos de bosque natural, lo que se autoriza de plantaciones y el tema de exportaciones de producto forestal, este año 2024 pues nos agrada mucho porque fuimos certificados ISO con una de las familias, la ISO 9001, calidad total. Eso va toda la gestión, desde el ingreso de una solicitud hasta la obtención de una autorización. Es un proceso bastante extenuante para quienes conocemos lo que implica de estar certificado con ISO, y que nuestras herramientas estén dando un paso importante y que el Instituto Nacional de Bosques a partir de este año 2024 haya obtenido la certificación ISO 9001 calidad total, pues a nosotros nos alegra mucho. Muchas gracias.
All of this, we as the Forest Service are grateful, and we are happy to tell you that we have been certified ISO 9001, which is a quality assurance of the processes with all the systems. And well, even though this is an exhausting process, we are grateful to tell you that we have done it and we have made it through this year. And yeah, it can be done, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Senora Vasquez, and also to Senora Goron for interpreting so that our audience can appreciate the hard work that Guatemala has done in securing ISO 9001 certification. It is extremely true, though, that tracking and traceability are essential, but the credibility of the tracking and traceability scheme that you use is even more important. Anyone can claim that they track and trace, but the quality of the tracking and traceability is what determines whether the chains of custody are solid or not. Very important. And with technological advancement, of course, many are moving into digitalization. Even ITTO has funded a couple of projects in Panama and also in Guatemala, I think, on tracking and traceability with handheld gadgets that are accurate and reflects truly what is actually happening on the ground. They're not very expensive to use. Of course, you need connections to either, phone lines or satellite reception, but it can work. Anyway, now from Latin America, where we started with Asia, we went to Latin America, and now we go to Ghana in Africa. And I invite Dr. Joseph Appiah-Japong to tell us about Ghana's adventure in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity. And all right, thank you. So we're looking at the Ghana GH legal assurance system, that Ghana's road to legally backed sustainable practices at scale. And we want to say that the Ghana and the EU entered into some voluntary partnership agreement, and which culminated into a legally binding agreement. And this was to ensure that the Ghana produces and export only timber and timber products to the EU by improving forest governance and law enforcement. The main vehicle for this to be achieved was an implementation of a legal assurance system, which we're going to inform you today. The system is to allow Ghana to verify that timber and timber products are sourced and produced legally, and also to award a FLEGT license, that's Forest Law Enforcement License, to verify the consignment and also to lend support to Ghana's effort in sustainable forest management. So the legality assurance system, that's the GHLAS, has legal standards. It also has a verification system, a chain of custody, a licensing authority, and an independent audit, which is critical to ensure that the system is qualitatively verified. So it's based on the principles that I'm going to mention here, 7 key principles where, first of all, we need to establish the source of the timber. And this is guided by management plans. The forest reserves have management plans, and this has been drilled down to compartments, and each of them is managed according to a plan where it has been designed to ensure that the forest is maintained and the ecosystem is balanced as well. There are also landowners. The plan ensures that landowners, individuals, and groups also have a say in the process where timber is sourced. 2, the timber rights allocation, it has to be done in natural forest and also plantation timber utilization contracts. There's also the salvage permit. This salvage permit is where in some of the forest reserves, development has to take place, and we need to salvage some of the trees for economic purposes and that. And also, timber that is confiscated, there are processes and procedures backed by law to ensure that they are regularized into the process of the timber chain. Thirdly, the timber harvesting operation. This is very important and must be ensured that it is harvested according to what has been prescribed, and also ensure that the ecosystem and the environment is well managed. First of all, before it is harvested, there are pre-felling inspections. This is supposed to ensure and identify the state of the forest before harvesting, and later that will also be used as a check as post-harvest monitoring. It's also to ensure that logs are accurately measured and recorded. This will lend credence to the documentation through the process as it gets to its final destination. Then also the timber harvested has to be clearly identified with the type of species, the volumes, and also the numbers that are being taken out. The stumps and logs are marked according to the manual. You need a manual which is guided how the harvesting is done, and all these have to have a link to each other. And secondly, there's also a social responsibility agreement with the landowners, the farmers, and the community, which ensures that compliance are adhered to in the process of the harvesting. And then finally, where there may be some damage to crops, compensations are paid adequately. Now, when we move to the area of transporting after harvesting, it has to also be clear criteria and indicators to be able to ensure that we identify things that are done right. The timber that is transported should be accompanied with official documents. And this document will have to look for from the origin, that's the source, and its corresponding physical identification of the timber where they are. There must be a link and a chain to be able to trace it to that system. The timber that is transported is within a period that it was agreed that it will be transported, because we need to monitor and track as well, which means. So all these are part of the system to ensure that the Ghana forest is managed sustainably. Now, the other element or principle which is key is the processing, where we're looking at the industry. That the timber processing facilities, they have valid licenses and duly registered with the Ghana Forestry Commission, and also complied with all legal requirements. That's one of the key things that is ensured. And then the industry relation practices conform to legal standards. It's also the key thing to ensure that industry is conforming to legal standards. Then in the area of trade, we look at exporters, that exporters have acquired Ghana Forestry Commission permit, have acquired permit from the Forestry Commission, and also the domestic vendors have also registered with the Ghana Forestry Commission. They are registered as part of the system to ensure that they are trained and they are supported to ensure that the forest is managed sustainably. So we try to register as well. There's also the fiscal obligation where loggers are not in default of stampage, which is collected, stampage fees, and also to make sure that fees are payable, other fees payable by the loggers in Ghana are done. Those are one of the key things that are looked at in the legality assurance system that we're looking at. And also exporters are also not in default of export levies. So these are very critical principles that underpin the GH laws that we have. Now, this is a summary of how the system looks at. The core of the GH laws is managing the forest sustainably and in a continuous manner, and it needs improvement. So first of all, we implement the management plans for the forest reserve and the prescriptions therein, and also conduct internal assessment that these prescriptions that are being implemented and generally the management plans conform to what has been earmarked to be. There's also the legality audit to ensure that all legal requirements are complied with. And also, critical to this also is the structured reporting, which I would emphasize in the next slide, and also the documentation for non-compliance are identified in real time, and also remediation measures are addressed. And also closure, reporting and documentation after harvesting is also identified in the loop. Then there's also the independent monitoring assessment of the functioning of the legality assurance system, which is supposed to ensure that any shortfalls or system defaults are identified and restored immediately. So that lends to systemic correction, and then it's communicated and the system is rectified. So there are near real-time identification of discrepancies. It also allows civil society, non-state actors to participate in the legality audit. And also it ensures that effective identification of the system issues come to the fore and actually addressed and discussed through a consultative process. So the verification system actually checks that all requirements are met and all actors in the supply chain also are part, the operators, the suppliers, as well as the regulators. It also provides objectively verifiable evidence that timber products and related activities comply with the requirements set out in the legality assurance system. And also based upon the audit, field and documentary, which are conducted, the set principles and criteria guiding the legality assurance systems are also, and with its indicators, are also monitored and tracked. So in terms of reporting, this is very important because it lends credence to the system. We have three main structures. That's first, there's a report to the Timber Validation Committee, which is a high-level committee at the ministerial level. And then also annual reports to the minister which he forwarded to that at the validation committee. So all these reports serves as a check and also to ensure that control and monitoring is strengthened. The Ghana Forestry Commission Audit Committee also play part in the structure, and then the Public Accounts Committee, where the reports out of the LAS are also subjected to for their comments, inputs, and guidance. Now, the other point is there's an independent monitor to ensure that to bring credibility and objectivity to the system. That is the Joint Monitoring and Review Mechanism, which is represented by parties with the Forest Law Enforcement and Governance, as well as the BPA team. So this ensures to a large extent to bring some credibility and objectivity to the system that Ghana is implementing. There's also a key point, which is the chain of custody, which of course is critical as we track from the forest floor through to export, and has tracking the timber products, and vice versa. And also, the COC is based on existing business processes and procedures, where some of them have been tweaked and automated in a way to ensure that there is reconciliation, a real-time reconciliation where there are discrepancies. Hitherto, we're using manual systems that could not be done, and takes time. So here is the interface of the application, where you can see the annual allowable card, how many permits have been issued, and generally to inform the system. This is to support the decision-making process in terms of sustainable forest management. The legality, the licensing authority, the licenses, the targeted end product of the legal assurance system comes with a technical system that really ensures that licensing are done. It guarantees that timber from the country has been harvested, processed, exported in accordance with the national laws and other international requirements. And a designated licensing authority issues the licenses and other verification reports to as well as that. Then Ghana then look at it in terms of the shipment. One important component is the independent auditing. This is to review and provide independent reports on the legality assurance system, and also check that components of the system function as proposed in the agreement. It sets out the component and ensure that this is done. It also contributes to the credibility of the country's system and the licenses that is being used. And also, there is an appointed by government, a country in consultation with EU, to ensure that this auditing is done according to the principles and standards that are required. So there are some lessons that has been done, and it informs us in refining and making the system more robust as we go through in the national system. So there are qualities that go beyond just the name of legal assurance system. Compliance with laws. We have the workers' rights and employment conditions are adhered to. And there are also community relations, and ensure that communities are communicated, they are part of the decision-making processes. And the benefits that's supposed to accrue from the system, the benefits go to the right people, the forest-based communities, and then also the communities and fringe forest communities around the places. Also, the system has inherent environmental values and impact. It ensures that the management plans that are adhered to addresses key biodiversity and sensitive areas that needs to be managed according to the environmental standards and principles. And then also the management planning, it's also done where manual of operations are developed to guide the management of every compartment of forest. And most importantly also is the monitoring and assessment, where the system lends itself with verifiable independent systems to ensure that it is assessed with credibility. And also high-value conservation areas are preserved. So basically, this has been the GH-LAS system, and it gives opportunity to better detect and correct areas of weaknesses. That's prompt reviews come to the fore. The system lends it to the fore. And also opportunity to better monitor and control the supply chain, as well as combat illegalities along the line, and also accumulation of forest management data to inform the strategic decision-making in the forest management we are embarking on. So in conclusion, I want to say that the benefit of an effective timber legality assurance system goes way beyond the delivery of legality licenses. It is underpinned by sustainable forest management principles, ensuring that environmental considerations are adhered to. Communities and stakeholders involving the forest management are given the opportunity to also make decisions and contribute to the process, and also lend itself to the standards, regulations, and rules of the country. So when it's as it's being implemented, it addresses key forest management, sustainability, and also governance challenges. So this is Ghana's legality assurance system. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much, Joseph. You know, you have made it very clear that Ghana has also worked very hard on this process. And through the years, and from what Dr. Joseph has reported, you see, organizations like ITTO always keep an eye on this, and in my previous career also, I worked very hard on helping countries with certification in sustainable forest management and the rest of it. And Malaysia was like Ghana. We were also involved in the Forest Law Enforcement Governance and Trade Program introduced by the EU, which then gave birth to the legality assurance systems, which is a precursor, actually. In any exercise, the legality of source is a must. If the legality of source is not verified, then the rest of that chain drops. It falls. So from Joseph's presentation, it's very clear that it's a technically challenging process, which has financial and human resource impact on the producing country. So they do need help in terms of technical assistance, potentially financial assistance if necessary, and whatever it is, I mean, that investment of all those resources into this whole chain process eventually does reveal what areas need improvement. So in most countries that have embarked on this journey, one of the learning curves and the learning result is the national legislation and regulations do get upgraded, invariably. They do get upgraded so that loops are closed and not exposed to contamination, should I say? I think that could be the right word. Right, I'll stop right there, and I think we have room for a couple of questions from the audience. Thank you, though, to all the distinguished speakers, and congratulations on all the successes achieved to date. Sure, there's more work that needs to be done, quite a lot more work that needs to be done. And of course, you know, certification and legality assurance would depend on which market your products are destined for. So there are some markets that don't ask. We won't mention who that is, but there are some markets that don't ask. I'll give you a quick recap on what ITTO is doing at the end. Please, Secretary General of, who came? Were you first? Sorry, I thought I saw, she's wearing a pink jacket, I'm sorry.
Actually, I'm not sure whether I was first, but thank you for this very, very nice event, and thanks to all presenters. I think you could demonstrate very impressive progress in timber tracking. I have rather technical questions to Dr. Ravichandran about his presentation. You mentioned criteria and indicators in your national system, but you also referred to verifiers. So I would like to ask you what is the difference between verifier and indicator, and if you could give us some examples. And maybe another question, you mentioned international certification schemes like FSC and PFC, and I did not understood whether you told that your system is compatible with those international systems, but is your system recognized by FSC and PFC? Thank you.
Thank you. When we talk of the criteria indicators, so indicators are ones through which whether that particular process, the criteria is met or not. To get that, you need data and information. Verifiers provide that kind of data and information to see whether the criteria which you have set has been met. So for verifiers, we have also looked at the periodicity. So every criteria and indicator has a verifier, and the periodicity of the verifier is also codified. It may be every year or every alternate year or once in 5 years or once in 10 years. So that's how our system has been built in order to make it much more robust. The other aspect which you talked about is whether FSC or PEFC has endorsed the Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme. See, today, whether as of now, they have not endorsed. What we want is, we want to see this Indian Forest and Wood Certification Scheme as a competitive scheme the countries can adopt. Apart from India, other countries can also adopt so that we can make it a global scheme. So this is what we are aiming. Hopefully we will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. And next to Ms. Yvonne Higuero, SecGen from CITES, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Satkuru. Thanks very much to all the presenters. It was really interesting. And I can see a lot of alignment with some of the traceability work that you're doing with the legal acquisition finding of CITES. And so I would be very interested to know, firstly, how much, because I imagine this is for all sorts of timber that you're exporting, but then, of course, when it comes to CITES-listed tree species, are you applying the same type of traceability with legal, to be able to meet the necessity of a legal acquisition finding to issue a CITES permit on that timber being exported? So that would be interesting to know. But also, I think that given these experiences that you have, it would be great if you can share those experiences with other countries that are range states with you. And I think Ghana is an excellent example. For example, with Pterocarpus erinaceus, that right now we're having some issues with a ban on exportation of Pterocarpus erinaceus because of lack of legal acquisition findings and non-detriment findings. But seeing how you have now this automated system, for example, it would be great if other range states of Pterocarpus could learn from your experience of putting in place this type of system. We're having a technical meeting for capacity building of those, particularly focusing on those Pterocarpus erinaceus range states in Cameroon in September, the 2nd to the 6th of September in Cameroon. And I think it would be excellent if these could be presented as case studies. I would say particularly the example of Ghana as a case study for the other range states to be able to learn from this experience. And I think eventually we would also want to do the same in the Asian and the Latin American region, seeing that now, as you say, Madam Satkuru, that it's now going very much to digital. I have such a trouble with that word, digitalization. That it would be great to know, if it's not that expensive, how others could benefit from, and maybe get support and contributions from donor countries on how to establish such a system that can be It's transferable, obviously, from any type of timber to then this specific CITES listed species for export, particularly for rosewood, which is the one that we have most difficulty with in terms of sustainability and legality and traceability of that trade. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Higuero, for three different questions, actually. I'll do the one on digitalization, but was your first question directed to India? Okay, please, Dr. Ravi.
Yeah. Thank you. So when it comes to timber transferability, traceability and legality issues, India has strong acts and rules in force. And very recently, we have come out with National Transit Pass System. It is a digital system, one nation, one pass. Any province, you can transport timber from Chennai to Jammu Kashmir or from Gujarat to Calcutta. So you need to have only one transit permit, and this transit permit is tracked across all states and union territories. That way, we have recently established a robust national transit pass system. So that takes care of the traceability and the legality issues. And when it comes to capacity building, we have identified all major stakeholders, and through many agencies at the national and international level, we are providing sensitization and awareness related activities so that this forest and wood certification scheme reach to the field level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ravi. Very succinct answer. Does it answer your question, I guess?
And I particularly mean for the international trade as well, that there would be that traceability when there's international trade, but also sharing experiences at the level of range states with other Asian countries that could then emulate the tools that you have. And that's what I meant also directing to Ghana about the fact that they're a range state of Pterocarpus erinaceus, and we have this issue of the ban on trade of Pterocarpus erinaceus. With this workshop, possibly there could be a case study on this work that you're doing. We call it's traceability, but of course under CITES we call it the legal acquisition finding, but it seems to me that you have all the elements that would meet the requirements of a LAF. Thank you. So maybe we more individually we can speak bilaterally, but I thought it would be a good case study for the other members, other range states in the region. Thank you.
Excellent. So that you can discuss bilaterally with Joseph and the Ghanaian delegation. But I am aware that with, at least in Asia Pacific, there have been discussions between the range states on the different species in terms of legal acquisition findings as well as non-detrimental findings in past years. So Asia Pacific isn't so exposed at this stage because a lot of the species that went onto the CITES listing has already been battled and fought and won and lost, and they've done all that. But Africa is facing huge challenges at this point, and ITTO is also looking for donor resources so that we can help the countries in capacity building and how to deal with these issues. So it's ongoing, pending finance, should I say. Thank you. Right, Yvonne. And for the last one, no, actually, thank you for telling us about the capacity building meeting in Cameroon also. So I'm sure, most members who wish to attend will attend. On digitalization and the projects that ITTO has conducted in the field, the starting point is every project that we execute in the field is always transferable and replicable. So it may need to be tweaked depending on the region in which it's being applied to. For example, if we do something and execute in Asia Pacific, that same project can be carried out in Africa and Latin America. The pity is that our donor community sometimes just wants to fund in one region and they don't follow it through by providing funding for another. So we are trying to connect the dots now by going to different donors, and we are trying to create programs rather than individual projects, or at least tackle it at the regional level, because some people tell us they don't get out of bed for project proposals that are less than X million, and then we put in a proposal at X million and then say, ooh, that's a lot of money. And you think, well, which one do you want? So again, that's an ongoing journey for us. It's our struggle to win at some point, but I'm sure that donors will see, many are beginning to see the value in that approach. With Rosewood, Yvonne, I have to say that we did have a donor who was about to fund a tracking and traceability project in Madagascar, and then they pulled out, they got cold feet. So we are still looking for donors to take that one on because it's a little bit, I wouldn't say, well, many donors get petrified because they immediately think that it's coming from an illegal source, which is not actually true. It's just that they were not legalized or the regulations or paperwork was not actually in line. This is what we found with the Madagascan stockpile. Anyway, working on that too. Now we have Ray from the Philippines, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for Guatemala. In light of your timber traceability system, which includes tracking the source, the manufacturer, and also the buyer of the timber or of the product, could you elaborate on how your system addressed the management of commercially sensitive information, especially on the identity of the seller and the manufacturer and the buyer, because it might affect the willingness of the corporations in the Philippines to participate actually in submitting their corporations to a very comprehensive system like what you have? Thank you.
Pues muchas gracias por la pregunta. Se hace un rastreo a través de los documentos. En el tema de la exportación, cuando se exporta un producto de Guatemala, tiene una identificación, un código de barras. Ese está vinculado con nuestro primer sistema, que en este caso es el Sistema Electrónico de Información de Empresas. Ese controla toda la exportación. Ahí está registrado de dónde viene ese producto. Se verifica y ya tenemos prácticamente a través de eso, podemos llegar hacia dónde fue aprovechado, qué tipo de bosque fue donde se aprovechó, y de la misma manera podemos llegar a ver el polígono ubicado geográficamente donde fue realizado el aprovechamiento forestal, y con el uso de imágenes ver el estado actual de ese polígono que fue aprovechado. Prácticamente hay una vinculación entre cada uno de los sistemas. Inicialmente los habíamos generado como pequeñas islas, las hemos interconectado una con otra, y cuando, por ejemplo, el producto que se exporta no tiene o se intentara exportar, no tiene un documento o algo que verifique, no se podría hacer una exportación.
All right. Thank you for the question. We currently do a tracking of all the exports that we already made. I mean, the forest sector in the country. We track it through different documentation, electronic documentation, and different systems. We currently have a system for companies, and we verify all the information of the company, the name, the source, and also the trading that they are doing between companies and also to the final consumer. And with this documentation that they provide through these systems, we can also track the source of the wood, if it is coming from a plantation for a natural forest being managed, etc. So we can check where is it coming from, what type of forest it is coming from, the polygon, the geographical polygon, and with that we can track with satellite images the status of the forests, so we can have the whole change of custody being tracked. At the beginning, we were developing these systems like small islands, so we didn't have it all connected, and it was a challenge. Because we need to engage different sectors, such as private companies, also customers, and also the government organizations. But with time and with support of different organizations, such as ITTO, we have connected all these systems, and we have engaged all the stakeholders in order to have all the traceability and all the stakeholders involved. And that's how we can now have records of every export that we have in the country. It's a long process, but yeah, that's how. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vasquez, and also Mr. Guron. We will take one. Sorry, did you want to say something? But I think Brazil was first. So just the last two, okay? One from Brazil and one from... Yeah. Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Brazil would like not really to make a question, but just to thank for the excellent presentations we've just heard now. We've learned a lot, and it's very important for Brazil to see that countries that are good partners of ours doing excellent work in traceability, and we share common interests in that, and we hope to work together in the future. And also like to thank Madam Satkuru for her moderation. It's always a pleasure to have her helping us find good solutions. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Brazil. Very kind sentiments. Fully appreciate it. Thank you. And now to the last question. Please identify yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Harrison Kajuang, representing the NGO desk, and particularly we are from the Forest Stewardship Council as well. I'd just like to appreciate what the countries have presented. And I started from the topic, which mentions responsible production and consumption. And this is the language that I'd like to see in the omnibus resolutions, because I think it's very important for us to be responsible in what we produce and how we consume it. In addition to that, I would like to say that as NGOs, we appreciate the attempts by these countries to improve traceability and legality, and not only stop at legality, but go towards sustainability. And a former Commissioner General of the Ghana Forestry Commission mentioned that to me, that he appreciated sustainability as a higher form of management beyond legality. So I appreciate what the countries have said. We appreciate India's effort, Malaysia, and so on. The question I do have is that, do these national standards in any way influence the policies or the operations of companies from these countries when they have timber concessions abroad? Because that footprint of those companies from the emerging markets is very important for us in many parts of the world, Africa included, particularly the Congo Basin. That's one question. The other thing I would like to say is that we, as the Forest Stewardship Council, our standards have also evolved to the extent that now we are applying supply chain integrity tools like blockchain to try to improve our traceability in the value chains. That's one thing. And we also have got isotope-based wood identification systems to also improve our supply chain integrity. Having said that, I also realize that we now do have a continuous improvement program for smallholders in certification. And I took very, very significantly what our friend from India said regarding the cost of certification. So our standard has also evolved to respond to some of the challenges of actually complying with certification and legality standards. The last thing I would like to say is that in the entire 2 days we have had this discussion, I've not heard the word trade being used very commonly, and markets and trade have a very powerful impact on the way we manage our systems. And it would be my appeal to the member states to use the power of markets to bring positive change. And I can see that from the language from India, Malaysia, Guatemala, and Ghana. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Harry. Very pertinent points that you have made over there. We are seriously running over time, but he's asked some interesting questions, and I wondered whether anybody on the panel would like to take them up, or shall I answer those questions? Yeah? Because in terms of, applying abroad and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
When it comes to industries, so in India, any industries which are established, they have to follow the rules, regulations, norms, guidelines of the country. So that way, even though they get the concession from abroad, so they need to follow the rules of our nation. That is one thing. The other aspects which you have mentioned, we need to look at it and we take note of it and try to incorporate wherever possible and feasible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to jump into the interpretation, but we have talked about it before. We appreciate the NGO observations, and also as part of the FSC, we in Guatemala have currently areas under the FSC standard, and we have also an initiative focused on small owners called the Guatemala Forestal Responsable, which means responsible forestry in Guatemala. And in the case of the traceability systems that we have developed through the government, we want to share to you that we can track imports also. So we can track all the information of the companies abroad, and they would being transformed in our country and being exported to different countries. And we also have it free of cost. So the small company owners, they don't need to pay anything. We do all the due diligence for them. And we also have third-party evaluators inside the government. And we also have the other regulations that we have talked about before, doing the due diligence in our country. So we have different observations and evaluators in our country in terms of evaluating these traceability systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Senor Gueron, for those very detailed answers as well. And just to respond back to a couple of Harry's points, you commended us on the title, on responsible production and consumption. This is what ITTO is all about in the second half of our mandate. The first half, of course, is the implementation of sustainable forest management in tropical forests. And it's not because we think that it's a buzzword, but the responsible production and the responsible consumption needs to be tied together. For many years, the focus was only on responsible production. So producing countries had to go through the hoops and hurdles of ensuring and investing in responsible production. But consuming markets would never commit to responsible consumption. So we need to balance both. There was never premiums that were being paid. And for the Malaysian industry, when I worked with the Malaysian industry, it was one of the largest timber industries in the world. And I remember when we were encouraging them to embark on the route of certification and responsibility, the first question is, so what's in it for us? Why would we do it? And we thought, right, we couldn't guarantee a price premium because the consuming markets just don't pay. For certain applications, sometimes there was a premium of about 20% above market price, but generally it was around about 5%, 6%, which wasn't really worth them expanding their financial and human resources, right? But the government was insistent that this should happen. And so we managed to convince them, and my one answer to them is, you embark on this process, you maintain your market access. If you don't have it, you lose your market access, which means your business goes down to almost zero, right? So there's market circumvention, of course. Many industries and many countries did that. You circumvent the regulated markets and you go in through the weaker points. So it's an open secret until somebody has to highlight and say, hey, so you think you're regulating your market, but actually no, they're coming in through the back door. Right? So this happened a lot over the last 3 decades. But we have made the right moves and right observations and the right recommendations on how to tackle this problem. But it's an ongoing exercise, that much I have to say, right? So it's work in progress again, but there has been tremendous improvement in the field, I have to say. The other question was whether national regulations and legislation would apply if the companies operate abroad. 30 years ago, the answer is a flat no. Up till 15 years ago, pretty iffy. This is from my experience of having been in the field for 30 years. Right now, it's more yes than no. Why? Because they need to report back, and most governments now keep an eye on their companies who are operating abroad, and it's a reputational risk. This is where the due diligence is critical. Because if you do your due diligence, then the reputational risk is either mitigated, reduced. Sometimes it's difficult to eliminate risk to 0%. But good risk mitigation is always a good business case, right? So that's that. And thank you for highlighting the isotope wood ID. Definitely. There's also DNA wood ID, and there are several expert houses over the world who are doing this. So ITTO is working on a couple of projects with them too. When I worked for Malaysia, we worked with the Thunen Institute in Germany in testifying that the species that were coming in were actually Malaysian and not from any range states coming in the region. And these guys are so good. Science is beyond me, I'm not really a scientifically brained person, but you do learn, and the science is fantastic. So that's that. Smallholders, yes. The cost is there, even for certification, but certification schemes have adapted themselves with group certification and all the rest to encourage more and more stakeholders to come on board. And as I said, ITTO is looking into conducting a study on artisanal producers, particularly in the African continent, because that's where they are quite rife and a lot of transboundaries. Right. Now, for next steps, of course, I will not attempt to summarize what everyone has said, right, because the details are already there. But the next steps, of course, we have to see and ensure that the future for certification and legality assurance is not disturbed, because there are two very key and effective tools improving legality of source. Next thing is, of course, with tropical forests, we know they're great sequesters. Use of tropical wood products, sustainably managed, of course, and sustainably produced, are great carbon sinks. Everybody needs to scream this out. Maybe this should also be in the omnibus. Thank you for that suggestion. The IPCC report also supports the use of sustainably produced wood products. I'm rushing now. Then we need to fit it in with the global biodiversity framework, of course. Conservation in producing forests is very, very doable. ITTO's and CBD's joint collaborative initiative a few years ago, 16 countries proved that it can be done and it is not disturbed. Impact of the UDR is an open question. Of course, we need to wait and see whether the regulators and also the field practitioners are open-minded enough to accept the progress that has happened. Right, ladies and gentlemen, another big hand for all our wonderful speakers today, for all their contributions. Congratulations to all the achievements, and I thank you for being a great interactive audience as well. Session is now concluded. Thank you. Thank you very much.